straight.
It's actually going to go a little bit.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's press conference with the Department of Education and Early Childhood Development regarding recommendations on English Prime and French language learning that will begin to be implemented this fall. To start things off today, we will hear from the two co-chairs of the Executive Steering Committee who have led this initiative. We have Ardith Shirley, Executive Director of the MBTA, and Dr. Tiffany Baston, Assistant Deputy Minister for the Anglophone Education Sector. Following this, Education and Early Childhood Development Minister Bill Hogan will share some remarks. After his remarks, we will move on to questions. And we will start with one question and one follow-up question and go from there. Reporters will have the opportunity to ask questions to both Minister Hogan and the two co-chairs. All speakers can be attributed for their responses. And just a note that you may be aware that Ms. Shirley wears two hats. Today, she is here in her role as co-chair of the Executive Steering Committee and will be happy to answer questions relating to that work. So co-chairs, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Ardith and I are very pleased to be here today together, sharing these recommendations with you. So in April 2023, the Department of Education and Early Childhood Development announced a steering committee would be created to lead the next steps for improvements to the Anglophone sector. The committee was made up of representation from educators, students, parents, early childhood, school districts, district education councils, and 9 other key rights and stakeholder groups. The committee established 2 working groups, and we have working group chairs with us today. Thank you so much for your work on that. And they work to gather input and submit recommendations to the steering committee. One group focused on English Prime improvement, the other on French second language learning improvement. And additionally, we've had an online questionnaire that's been launched in June 2023 to further inform decision making. And the engagement was extensive. We had 100 unique engagement sessions that were held to inform these recommendations. So I'll pass it over to Ardith to begin sharing the recommendations. We'll provide a high-level overview of these, and then the minister will provide further elaboration.
So the first recommendation I had the pleasure to share with you this morning is based on the respondents, including students, indicating the need for well-trained and available supply teachers due to shortages. So the first recommendation is that contract supply teachers for each district according to historical data, making them part of the staff and supporting other teaching and learning efforts when they're not filling absences.
So the second recommendation is we heard from many experts, families, and students indicating more in-class and in-school support was required. So therefore, we're going to embed academic support teachers in select schools to support literacy and numeracy development in kindergarten to grade 5.
The third recommendation involves schools who currently have dedicated behavior intervention mentors report significant decreases in behavior and misconduct reports. And therefore, we recommend to strengthen and expand access to behavior intervention mentors.
The next recommendation is to address French second language learning improvement. We know from our engagement sessions that we want to connect learners with one-on-one peer and mentoring opportunities. We want authentic French language learning opportunities. We want to celebrate French language and culture. And we want to develop a hub for exemplary language learning resources and access to French language experts. Therefore, we're going to establish a Center of Excellence for Language Learning as a hub for exemplary resources and identifying and connecting learners and educators to authentic cultural opportunities.
The importance of school leaders was also highlighted in the feedback to support school communities. As a result, NB Lead, a leadership strategy that will be developed in collaboration, will be launched the fall of 2023. The purpose is to convince recommendation number 5 to provide leadership development support to principals and vice principals to ensure they will be successful in their roles with a particular focus on those that are new to their positions.
The next recommendation refers to dedicated professional learning supports. So we know that we have a dedicated curriculum professional learning day included within the school calendar year. And for next year, we'll be adding an additional day dedicated for positive learning environments. And the recommendation reads, provide additional professional learning opportunities that support a positive learning environment and the foundational elements of a holistic curriculum.
And almost all feedback cited the importance of teachers knowing their students. The recommendation number 7 connects to this by providing provincial guidelines for the development of student profiles and designate all staff to support teachers to develop these profiles for students in their team during the first weeks of school each year. The guidelines will be created this year and will be considered by the Executive Steering Committee for longer-term goal implementation.
And the final recommendation, we heard that at times administrators and resource teachers can become overburdened with paperwork, which takes their time away from supporting other teachers and learners. Therefore, we're undertaking a review of administrative processes with a view of streamlining the amount of paperwork that principals and resource teachers are required to complete, allowing them to devote their time to supporting learners. I'd like to just share a few next steps before we pass it over to the Minister for further elaboration on the recommendations. So we continue to work with the Executive Steering Committee. We will be meeting again soon to determine the implementation of these recommendations and also look at longer-term recommendations. We will be reviewing the survey results as that closes the end of July. Currently, over 3,000 responses have been received. And we will be exploring recommendations gathered for more long-term, as mentioned, with our key stakeholders and rights holders. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Baston and Ms. Shirley, for that excellent presentation and about the work the Executive Steering Committee and the working groups have been engaged in over the last few months. I'm excited to be here today. It's clear the committee understands the importance of the task at hand. It took the necessary time and steps to consult with subject matter experts and engage with community members, teachers, and families. A survey was launched for families and community members to provide feedback in 12 different languages. To date, more than 3,000 responses have been received. That survey will remain open until the end of July. There was also an opportunity to provide feedback through an email inbox. To date, we have received over 90 messages. Maintenant que nous avons
Now that we have the committee's report and short-term recommendations, let's talk about what the government is going to do in the future. Today, I'm pleased to announce 8 changes to the English language school system that will have an immediate and positive impact on English language schools.
To implement these recommendations this fall. These will support positive behavior, academic achievement, inclusive education practices, opportunity for language learners, and imbalances between classrooms. So the first one, we've had a bit of a struggle the last few years in filling absences with qualified supply teachers. So the first thing that we're going to look at is we want to have well-trained and available supply teachers in locations where they're needed. We'll work with school districts to contract supply teachers on the needs that have been identified in the past. So these supply teachers will be under contract, they'll be part of a school staff, and they'll support teaching and learning efforts if they're not filling absences. So this is an excellent resource that we're going to add to schools. And on days that they're not needed to replace an absent teacher, we've got tons of work for them to do. We also we looked at some of the things that we did in the past, and one of the things that we did previous, I guess probably 10 years ago, we had literacy and numeracy mentors in schools. And in doing that, we received, in evaluating students reading at grade level by the end of grade 2, we had in excess of 80% success rate. So we're going to look at that again, and we're going to engage and hire teachers to work in numeracy and literacy with individual students and small groups of students to bring them up to the grade level where we want them to be. And that's going to happen in the kindergarten to grade 5 level. We know that students that are reading at grade level by the end of grade 2 have a greater chance of success than those that do not. We're also going to look at the behavior intervention workers. We do have some of those in the system currently. They're doing a wonderful job. If I think back, we had school intervention workers, and they worked with students that exhibited challenging behaviors, needed that extra support, worked with teachers. So we will be adding new behavior intervention workers to the system starting in September, so that we can continue to work on this positive, the positive outcomes that we've already received and had. And, I look forward to seeing positive outcomes in classroom management and in terms of trying to level the playing field with our prime and immersion classes. We want our group of teachers to know that students work. We want our teachers to know their students well. Over the years, there's been a lot of different tools that have been put into place to create student profiles so that we get to know students well. I can think of several of them that come to mind over my 35 years in education. And we're going to return to that. We're going to work on creating student profiles. We're going to use the ones that are currently implemented and are working well, and we're going to build upon those so that teachers have a better sense of who the students are that they're teaching. Because in doing that, maybe they'll learn how they learn best, whether it's oral, written, the different modalities that we'd refer to them as. And it will help improve academic success and achievement by doing that. I know as a principal and an administrator for a number of years that the paperwork involved in that it can be, I don't want to say overwhelming, but it can be extremely time consuming. We want our principals to be instructional leaders. In order to be an instructional leader, you have to be out of your office, you have to be visiting classrooms, working with teachers directly. And that helps you understand what's going on in the classrooms. It also helps you understand what's going on with the students in your school, and it gives you a really clear picture of what the climate is in your school. So that's one of our challenges, and that's one of our goals, is to reduce the paperwork that principals and our R&M teachers, resource and method teachers, will have to do. Because it's important to have them out and about. We also want to ensure that school leaders are successful in their roles. NB Lead, a leadership strategy developed in collaboration with the department, the New Brunswick Teachers Association, school districts, and the University of New Brunswick will launch this fall. Now, when I was early in my leadership career, I did participate in something that I think is quite similar. And what it identified for me were my strengths and what we call potential derailers, things that could send things sideways. And it's just, for the most part, what my strengths were. They could also be potential derailers if I didn't use it in the proper way. And I've never forgotten that to date, because I keep that front of my mind when I'm talking to people and when I'm working with people, because I can be direct, and sometimes not everybody receives that in a good way. So this type of thing is important for a leader to understand how to work with other people, how to recognize the professionalism that we have with teachers in schools, and to work together to bring our students up. We want to ensure our teachers have professional learning opportunities that support a positive learning environment. An online professional hub has been created to provide access for educators and key partners to learning opportunities. New learning modules will be related to de-escalation, co- and self-regulation, and this, of course, speaks directly to behavior issues in the classrooms and in the school, and culturally responsive classrooms are being developed. Additionally, there will be a dedicated professional learning day for teachers on the holistic curriculum on August 31st, and a dedicated professional learning day for all staff on positive working and learning environments on September 22nd. Now, this isn't just about the prime classrooms. We want to also improve our French second language instruction in the anglophone system. And as Dr. Baston said earlier, I'm very pleased to announce that we will be establishing a Center of Excellence for Language Learning. And it's going to, with a focus on developing research for working with French language learning stakeholders to determine the vision for the center. The Language Learning Opportunity Sites, or the LLOs, will work directly within the Center of Excellence, which will manage the process for the current sites to continue with their proposals and new sites to participate in the future, because we've had tremendous success with our LLO sites. It's not to say everything's been hunky-dory everywhere, but overall we've had wonderful, wonderful success, and it's due to the leadership from the people at the department and the districts that why we've had that success. Je tiens à remercier Dr. Baston.
I want to thank Dr. Baston and Ms. Shirley, as well as all the members of the steering committee and the two working groups for the excellent work linked to those recommendations. We are obviously proud today to be making progress in our commitment to bring about the necessary improvements to these apprenticeship programs, or rather these learning programs. It should be noted, however, that there is still work to be done. It's not over. We've just started.
Together to engage with stakeholders, community members, educators, learners, and families to ensure that actions will be taken that accurately reflect the needs of our education system. À mesure que nous progresserons,
as we move on, we will be able to count on the much appreciated work of the steering committee to inform us and learn more.
A better education system. Everything we do for our students. We are confident that the actions we are taking will have a positive impact on our Anglophone school system, and we look forward to continuing to engage with the stakeholders as we move forward in this process. Thank you. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. We will now proceed with questions. And as I mentioned, each reporter will have the chance for at least one question and one follow-up question. We'll see how much time is left after that. And you do have the ability to ask questions in the language of your choice. So first up is Jacques Poitras with CBC.
On the contracted supply teachers and behavior intervention mentors, why will it be any easier to recruit for those positions than it is now, given the existing recruitment and retention challenges?
So I think one of the challenges that we've had, and I'll allow my colleagues to chime in if I leave something out, is with the current system, the substitute teachers don't have a guarantee where they're going to go every day, and sometimes through the system that's in place to pick the jobs, it makes it challenging. And what we've had, unfortunately, is we've had a number of unfilled absences. So we're going to work to try and improve that. But one of the things we're going to do is we're going to hire teachers under contract so that we know in certain areas and districts will help identify those schools that teacher X will be available on any given day to replace the first teacher that's absent. If there's no teacher that's absent, then we'll have that teacher available to work with individual students or small groups of students to help them and catch up and whatever they need to do to help improve the learning. The behavior intervention mentors are very, very important. When we had school intervention workers prior to the behavior intervention workers, they worked directly with students, they worked with teachers, and they helped students learn to self-regulate, help staff and teachers and students learn to co-regulate, and they help them choose a more positive path with their behavior and reduce the interruptions that happen in class and the interruptions to the learning environment. I don't know if I left anything out there.
Okay, I'll ask my follow-up. The Center of Excellence on French Second Language, we often hear about centers of excellence, and it's never quite clear to me how what they do sort of rolls out to the rest of the system to actually improve things overall. So, what would be the practical impact of the work done in the Center of Excellence for schools province-wide in French Second Language, and how long will that take to, I imagine, flow out of that work?
Well, we're going to ramp it up as quickly as we possibly can. I mean, I think that we've already started some of the work on that. And one of the challenges that we have with French second language is not everywhere in the province can you go to practice the language outside of the school. So it's an artificial environment in school, and when you go out into your community, and I'll use Woodstock as an example because that's where I'm from. You know, you just can't go anywhere in Woodstock and speak French because you don't have those people in the community to practice with. So this part of this Center of Excellence will be to provide those resources online to have authentic learning opportunities, one that aren't just based on the curricular areas where they can practice that. It's also important to provide the support for our language learning opportunities and for French learning opportunities for rural areas, because those are the areas that we want to focus on. It's also an opportunity for immersion, students and teachers to get resources and to have direct interaction with people that can help support the work that they do in the classroom. And I'll let Dr. Baston, if she wants to add anything to that.
Yeah, just to elaborate, the Center of Excellence model is a central hub where educators can have direct access to experts, researchers, resources, etc. in one area, so it's easier to access. There will be a full-time educator, a French language educator, who will be kind of the knowledge translator or the person who will connect with the teacher and be the medium to access the experts, etc. So there can be things like mentoring where, you know, a student from, for the example of Woodstock, could have a French language mentor who they get on with. They chat in French. They do maybe potentially experiential learning. They may go visit a site. But again, it's equitable access across the province. So regardless of where you live, you'll have access to all of these French language resources, including live experts who can promote your language development.
Great. Thank you, Jacques. Thank you, everyone else. Next is Silas Brown with Global.
Hi there. I'm curious about the French language opportunities for rural access resource. This is the first time I'm hearing about this. Can we get some more details on how that's going to work and how that's going to roll out, and really what the hope for that?
So the acronym for that is FLORA, and that's been around for a number of years now. I just use what FLORA stands for. So they'll work and they'll get the assistance from our French Center of Excellence, the same way as all the rest of our teachers and students will be able to do across the province.
Are there other shortages, things like school psychologists and other personnel shortages in the system that are going to impact the implementation of any of this? I know you're talking about recruiting different positions here, but there are other bottlenecks that exist in the system that have gotten a lot of focus that there seems to be no mention of.
So in the anglophone system, the school psychologists do mainly psychoeducational testing, which help teachers. There's quite a backlog in that, and there is a number of positions open. On the francophone side, there's not as many positions open. I believe there's only 2 open on the francophone side. I could have that wrong, but I know there's less than we have on the anglophone side. On the anglophone side, we do have guidance counselors, and you know, they're trained counselors. I guess we call them student counselors now. Mm-hmm. But they'll be a key resource to assist the behavior intervention mentors who are going to receive. I mean, we currently have a number of them in the system, so we're going to increase that, and it's really important that we help children learn how to self-regulate, learn how to identify their triggers, and that we meet them where they're at, and we talk about what's going on in their lives and what's triggering their behavior, because every behavior has a reason. There's a goal for the behavior, and it's either come out of a learned response, or it's trying to get a response. So helping our children learn how to self-regulate is extremely important. You know, we're continuing to look for educational psychologists, and we'll continue to do that to try and fill the vacant positions that we have, but it is quite a challenge.
Okay, next is John Chillibeck with Brunswick News.
How much is all this going to cost, and how will we get? Oh, sorry. How much is this going to cost, and how much are you going to pay for it all?
So I don't have a figure for how much this is going to cost, but it's already built into our budget.
You don't have a figure for how much?
Well, I can't tell you right off the top of my head what the exact costing is for a lot of this. Some of it doesn't cost much money at all. Reducing paperwork doesn't cost a lot of money. It's more of a question of trying to find out what all the demands from all the different levels that we have in the system that are being placed on administrators and resource teachers, and trying to look at a better way to make that happen. So that's a cost-free thing. The additional personnel, we already have the money in our budget to do that.
What kind of goals have you set for some of these things? Like, how many supply teachers are you hoping to get on contract? How many of these, extra mentors are you going to hire for K-5 for literacy? Like, do you have goals on this? How many new behavior intervention workers do you want?
So currently we're working with the districts, and we're going to work with each individual district to see what their needs are and how we can best meet the needs currently with the funds that we have available, and then look to see how we can augment that as we move forward. But we need to rely heavily on the districts for the data that they have and the needs that they have. Because on-field absences was a big problem last year. Hopefully it won't be as big a problem next year, but we do have a shortage of teachers. And we welcome teachers from right across Canada that, would like to come back to New Brunswick to teach, or would like to move and experience our wonderful lifestyle here in New Brunswick. They're more than welcome to come and apply for the jobs that we have.
Those be unionized contract jobs?
Absolutely.
Great, thank you. Next is Allison Sampson with CTV.
Thank you. I'm wondering what information is going to be available in the student profiles when you're compiling them?
Well, the student profiles, mainly we would look at their preferred style of learning and how best to help them. We may have some demographic or some family information there that's important to have, as we'd have in a cumulative record card currently. But I think it's important when we look to, I've done a number of them. Multiple intelligences comes right to mind. Everybody has intelligence, and some have more intelligence in certain areas and they're less strong in other areas. Like some people are really musical. And also how children like to learn. What's the best way that they can learn, and how can we meet them and ensure that we're doing what we need to do so that they can learn and that they can achieve to the best of their ability. So there's different, and I use modalities because that's what we call them. And, whether you learn best by doing, you learn best by seeing, best by hearing, best by reading, or a combination of all of those. So we want to look at that. We want to develop these profiles so that we can ensure greater student success, because that's what we're looking for. We're looking to improve our system with greater student success.
Are there any mechanisms in place to review the profiles to make sure children aren't boxed into them or reduced down to the information that's put in the profiles?
Well, it wouldn't be a boxing in situation. It's more, and it isn't reducing down. It's more building up and expanding on the information that we may or may not have. There's some wonderful tools that are currently in place. We're going to look at those and build upon those and look at some of the other tools that we've used in the past. If I look at my 35 years in public education, there's been a lot of different tools, and we seem to use those for a little while, and then we do something different. But together, they give us a pretty clear picture of the student. So it isn't so much as pigeonholing a student, but trying to find the best way that a student learns. And when we find the best way for a student to learn, then the teacher can try and teach to how the student learns best. Through that, we get greater student success.
Thank you very much, Minister. We have time for one more question each, if everyone has one more question, and we'll go in the same order. Jacques Pascal, CBC.
Can I just ask Ms. Shirley, I know your steering committee hat is on, but you're from the MBTA, like what you think teachers will make of these ideas. Obviously, you've brought their views forward in this. So just from a teacher's point of view, what do you make of all this?
Sure. I would suggest that I think that from the feedback, certainly there were teachers and educators at all levels throughout this consultation process. And I think if you think back even to January, when there were the public consultations, teachers' voices were heard very loudly. I would hope that when teachers have a chance to read the report today, they'll see the first 8 recommendations holistically as an attempt to sort of stabilize the classroom situations that they've been speaking of. We know there's been chronic understaffing. Our minister has spoken today about the shortages. We had almost 1,000 unfilled absences in the first 2 months last year. So although the recommendation for contract supply teachers, to your point, you don't create new teachers necessarily, but it is the hope that having those opportunities where people can predict where the work is and that they can sort of guarantee and plan their life around, that we'll have more teachers willing to come back and say, you know what, I will re-engage and I am willing to step back into that classroom again. So that would be one piece of it. I also think that a number of the other recommendations speak to things that have already occurred in the past that teachers saw great hope for. And to, I guess, recommit resources to that, I think will be welcomed by teachers. I will maybe just speak again to the student profiles, because I think that one will raise a lot of questions for teachers. What does this mean? Because as it's worded in the report, it can sound a little bit different than what they've been used to. But I would say the profiles piece, I would reiterate that right now, this recommendation is about creating provincial guidelines, because as Minister has said, there are profiles used throughout our system in all kinds of different ways. This is about creating or talking about guidelines for a provincial standard. But then the second part of the recommendation is about giving classroom teachers time in the first few weeks of school to focus on that. And that is new. So I would hope as we see these recommendations begin to be actualized or considered, that they'll see a reinvestment in the respect for the profession, the importance of those frontline classroom teachers, not to minimize the other roles in the system. But if you do not have qualified, competent classroom teachers who feel well supported, then the rest, it really is a difficult lift. So I would hope they'll see a hopeful future.
You might have addressed this, so forgive me if I'm going over old ground, but I'm just curious. You have so many areas of improvement here for the anglophone sector, and we know that there could be improvements in the francophone sector. How will any of this bleed into the francophone sector? Will you take these ideas and put some of them in, or are there challenges so much different that you wouldn't do that?
The two sectors are different. I mean, there certainly are some challenges on the francophone side, but they have the PALC, which is their system has been generated from student parent upward, and so they meet the needs in a different fashion. It's not to say that it's perfect, because there is room for growth. If there's things that we're doing in the anglophone sector and discussion at the department that might be beneficial for the francophone sector, then we'll look and see how we can do that.
Just back to the profiles, will they include preferred genders and names?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
If a student has a preferred gender that isn't what's listed, will it be included as long as the name they provide?
At the beginning of each school year, there's a form sent home to parents where parents fill out all that information, and we update it in our system. I don't see that changing at all.
All right. Thank you very much, Minister. And I would like to thank both co-chairs for their presentation and for their remarks today, along with Minister Hogan. That concludes today's press conference, and thank you everyone for joining us. Have a great day.
Thank you.